All right, so are you ready for this?
Oh yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, cool.
Why
Let's
not?
take a deep dive, like we always do, into radiation therapy careers. But, this time we're thinking specifically about someone, with autism.
Interesting.
Right. So to help us, with this, we've got this great blog post from, I think it's called Cheap ABA, and a bunch of other research
A
too.
lot to unpack.
Yeah, and we're gonna like break it all down. I mean, so you don't have to, do endless Google searches. We're gonna try to figure out what the perfect fit is, with your interest in mind. So
Yeah, it's such a cool field, and
yeah,
it's really evolving,
yeah,
and there are some really neat opportunities, especially for people on the spectrum.
yeah, for sure. So the blog post, that we have here talks about four main job types,
Okay.
and the first one up, and this is probably like the one that most people picture in their head, right? When you think radiation therapy, is the clinical radiation therapist,
Uh, uh,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, this is where you're working directly with patients, delivering the actual radiation treatment. So you're sort of like guiding them through a pretty intense experience using all this really cutting edge technology.
yeah, and I mean, I guess it could be challenging, for some people on the spectrum, all that interaction with patients, right? But
Yeah.
but the blog post really does talk about how rewarding it can be,
Yeah.
to help people, at such a difficult time in their
Oh,
lives,
for sure.
you know.
And what's really striking is that research suggests that autistic individuals often demonstrate profound empathy, even if it's expressed differently.
Hmm.
So that that deep connection, that ability to really understand another person's experience,
Yeah.
can be really powerful in this kind of role. And in fact, the blog post has this really it tells this really moving story about a therapist who was able to connect with a nonverbal patient through their shared love of I think it was jazz music.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an incredible example. I mean, it really does show, how those unique strengths, that people have um, can come into play, right?
Right.
And speaking of unique strengths, right?
Uh-huh.
The next role is all about, precision, right?
Oh,
The radiation therapy dosimetrist.
okay.
So this is where like the behind the scenes magic happens, right?
It's
With
absolute.
the treatment.
Yeah, the dosimetrist is like the architect of the radiation treatment plan. They use this really incredibly sophisticated software and algorithms to calculate the exact radiation dose,
Hmm.
taking into account things like the tumor location, the patient's anatomy, even breathing patterns.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's imagine it like creating a 3D map
Yep.
for radiation beams.
Okay, yeah.
It takes a ton of technical expertise and a real knack for problem solving.
Yeah, and the blog post definitely emphasizes that technical aspect of this job.
Uh-huh. Right.
And and that can be a huge draw for people on the spectrum, but they also mention, the high pressure environment.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Mistakes in this role can have, serious consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating because the research we have here on autistic individuals in STEM fields
Hmm.
suggests that many thrive under that kind of pressure.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
That intense focus, the drive to get things exactly right, that can be a real asset when you're dealing with such, intricate calculations and life-saving treatments.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how do you think that resonates with your own personality?
Man, that's a good question. Um, I definitely, get hyper focused on things that I'm interested in, and I can't stand it when details are off.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, maybe that precision aspect, would be a good fit for me, right?
Right.
But I also know I get stressed out easily, so maybe that high pressure side would be,
Yeah, it's all about finding that balance,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
Figuring out what environment brings out, your best self.
Right.
Now, if we're talking about diving deep into the science, the radiation oncology physicist is where it's at.
Okay, so for those who like really, geek out on physics, this is like their dream job.
Exactly. Think of the physicist as the guardian of the technology.
Uh,
They make sure all the equipment is calibrated perfectly, the safety protocols are airtight,
mhm.
and the radiation beams are hitting their target with pinpoint accuracy. So it's a highly technical role.
Yeah.
Often involves research and pushing the boundaries
Mm.
of what's possible with radiation therapy.
So, and the blog post mentioned that this job usually requires a PhD, which is a, a pretty big commitment, right? So what are your thoughts on that, especially for someone on the spectrum, right?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and the research here actually offers some interesting insights.
Yeah. Okay.
Some studies suggest autistic individuals um, may face some unique challenges in traditional academic settings,
Mhm.
but others highlight their incredible ability to hyper focus and absorb information in areas of deep interest.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the individual and their own learning style.
Yeah.
And it's about finding the right support systems and resources to thrive in that kind of environment.
That makes sense. So it's not, like a one size fits all.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's about, knowing yourself and your needs and finding the right fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got like the clinical side, right? We've
Yeah.
got the technical side. But what about the folks who want to, make a difference, in the field, but maybe aren't thrilled about, constant patient interaction? Right?
Yeah. So that's where the radiation therapy educator or instructor, that's where they come in, right?
Right, right.
Right.
Imagine shaping the next generation of radiation therapists.
Yeah.
Passing on your knowledge and experience to eager minds.
Uh-huh.
It's a less patient-facing role, but
Mm.
still incredibly impactful.
Yeah, and the blog post talks about how, that this can be a good option for some autistic individuals who may find that direct patient care, kind of draining.
Yeah.
Right? It can be, but it still allows them to, contribute to the field, which is awesome.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating is that research shows autistic individuals often excel at systematizing information and explaining complex concepts in clear, logical ways.
Oh, that's interesting.
And those are incredibly valuable skills for an educator. So, it's about taking all that knowledge and making it accessible and engaging for future generations of therapists.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these four, very different paths within radiation therapy, right?
Mhm.
Each, kind of with its own, unique appeal.
Right.
But what's starting to jump out at you as we're, kind of diving deeper into this? What feels like a good fit, or maybe something you'd, want to explore like further?
Yeah, I mean, it's too early to say for sure, but I'm really drawn to the technical precision of the dosimetrist role.
Okay.
I like the idea of using those problem-solving skills to create something so intricate and impactful.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also intrigued by the research aspect of the physicist role.
Okay.
There's so much potential for innovation there, and I think it would be amazing to be on the cutting edge of new discoveries.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds like, you've got some great options to, consider.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's one thing, the blog post didn't really address, and that's, salary.
Right.
Right. I mean, let's be real. That's a big factor for most people when they're trying to figure out what they want to do, what career they want to go into.
Absolutely.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. And luckily we've got some additional research here that can shed some light on that
What's that
aspect.
great?
So let's take a quick look at the numbers.
Okay.
And then we can circle back to the bigger picture, what all this means for you and your future in radiation therapy.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have all that data about salaries, and it looks like radiation therapists, overall they make a pretty good living.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. And the field is, supposed to like grow a lot in the next 10 years, which is always a positive sign,
Yeah, that is really reassuring, to hear that. So it's not just, a good career path for, personal reasons, but like practical ones too, right?
Yes, exactly.
But those numbers, you said that's just like the average, right?
Right. Yeah.
I'm guessing, like experience and specialization also play a role, especially in those more technical roles we were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. As you gain experience and maybe get some advanced certifications, your earning potential, it definitely goes up.
Mm.
The research we have here it shows that physicists, for example, they tend to be on the higher end of the salary range, probably because of all that education they need to have.
Yeah.
Dosimetrists, they also make a good salary, which makes sense because their job is really complex,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of responsibility.
So it's not just about, how much you make when you first start out, right? It's like about the long game, like, building a career for yourself.
Exactly.
But you know what? Beyond the money, what's really hitting me is the human side of this field,
Right.
It's not just about like, radiation beams and calculations. It's about like real people
Right.
who are dealing with really, really tough situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Radiation therapy is deeply connected to the human experience. You're working with people, at a very vulnerable time in their lives. They're relying on you to provide, not just the treatment, but also, compassion, understanding.
Right. And like we were saying before, a lot of, autistic people, they have those qualities, they have them in spades. That attention to detail, the focus on getting things right, the deep empathy, those can be really powerful strengths when you're working with patients who are going through something so difficult.
For sure.
You know.
It's about seeing the person behind the diagnosis,
Yeah.
understanding their fears, their hopes, and being there for them, being a source of support during a really hard time. The blog post it even mentioned this study where they found that patients who were treated by autistic therapists, they were actually more satisfied with how they communicated, and they felt like the therapist really understood their emotional needs.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, it really shows, how much of a positive impact, someone can make. But,
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's not always, easy,
Yeah.
right? The blog post, it talks about how emotionally tough this work can be,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially for the clinical radiation therapists. You're dealing with people who are facing these really serious illnesses.
Mhm. Right.
And that can be, a lot to carry.
It's true. And the research that we have on compassion fatigue, for healthcare workers, it really highlights that this kind of work can be emotionally draining, no matter what your neurodiversity is. But it also suggests that, things like mindfulness, having good support systems, those things can really help.
Mm.
And what's interesting is that some studies, they found that autistic individuals, they might actually experience empathy differently in a way that might actually protect them from burnout.
Really? That's so fascinating. It really challenges that stereotype, that people think autistic individuals are less empathetic.
Yeah, yeah.
But I imagine, those long shifts, that you have to work, and the irregular hours, especially in the clinical work,
Right. That could also be something to think about,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where self-awareness comes in.
Yeah.
Knowing your limits, understanding what kind of work environment helps you do your best. That's really important. Maybe for some people, the structured, predictable nature of the dosimetrist role, where you're mainly working with technology and data, maybe that would be a better fit.
Yeah, or maybe the research world,
Yeah.
for the physicist, where you can like really get into those, super detailed, complex things.
Yeah.
The blog post even mentioned this physicist who created this virtual reality simulation to help patients understand their treatment plans better, which I thought was really, really cool.
That's amazing.
It's like using technology to help people communicate better.
Exactly. And it brings up another important point. Even within these roles, there's so much room to specialize.
What the blog post gives us is just the starting point.
Okay.
There are tons of subspecialties within radiation therapy. Each one with its own, unique challenges and rewards.
So it's not just about finding like the perfect job title. It's about, going deeper and exploring those little areas where your interests and your skills can really stand out.
Right.
I remember I was reading about this autistic radiation therapist who specialized in treating kids with cancer.
Oh, wow.
And they loved comic books, and they used that passion to create these really engaging materials for the kids, to help make like a scary experience a little less intimidating.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it shows how powerful it can be to find those connections between your passions and what the field needs, you know.
Right.
And don't underestimate mentorship. Finding someone who's already working in radiation therapy who gets it, you know,
Uh-huh.
who understands what's needed and can give you guidance and support. That can be really helpful.
Yeah, it's like having, someone to help you, figure out the best way to go, like a compass, right?
Right, exactly.
But in the end, it comes back to you,
Yeah,
right?
right.
What kind of impact do you want to make, right?
Right.
What kind of environment will help you be yourself, your
Absolutely.
whole self,
Yeah.
autism and all.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head,
Yeah.
because that's when the magic happens, when you can be, truly yourself and reach your full potential.
Yeah, it really does feel like radiation therapy is a field where, someone's unique way of thinking, their own individual strengths, it can really make a difference.
I think so too, and that's what makes this, whole deep dive so helpful, right? It's about helping you see those connections, how your neurodiversity, it could actually be a real advantage in this field.
Yeah, like we're figuring out where all the pieces fit, like a puzzle. So as you're, thinking about these different career paths, what are you finding most interesting? What parts of the work just, seem really exciting?
Well, if you're drawn to like direct patient care, you know,
Okay.
and building those one-on-one relationships in the clinical radiation therapist role, that could be a great fit. But if you're more into the behind the scenes stuff, the precision, the problem solving, then the dosimetrist path might be more your style.
And if, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with technology and research, if that's what gets you going, the radiation oncology physicist, I mean, that could be your calling.
Or maybe you see yourself as a mentor, training the next generation of radiation therapists
Yeah.
as an educator.
I mean, there's so many cool possibilities, but this deep dive, this is really just the start, right? It's like the beginning of the conversation. It's opened up these new paths to explore. So now it's time to, take those next steps.
Yeah, go out there and talk to people who are actually working in the field. See if you can, shadow them. Ask them all those questions that you have. Look into, internships, volunteer opportunities. The more you get involved, the more you'll start to see how it all fits together.
Right. It's like going from theory to actually doing it, right?
Exactly.
Uh,
And as you're doing all that, just remember, your autism, it's not a disadvantage. It's a strength. It's part of what makes you. It's what will allow you to bring something really, really special to this work.
Yeah, so go out there, explore, discover what kind of impact you can make. We can't wait to see what you do. I